Welcome to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury.
Welcome to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury, the show that helps individuals and small business owners fight back when the IRS comes calling. Lance Drury is a seasoned tax attorney who's been defending clients for over 20 years with one goal in mind: protecting what matters most. I'm your host, Heidi Mack, and today we're answering a surprisingly common question: do I need a tax attorney or a CPA? This episode is: do you need a tax attorney or CPA? Know who to call and when. Hey, Lance, thanks for joining us again.
It's great to see you, Heidi. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. So let's start with the basics. What's the difference between a CPA, a tax preparer, or a tax attorney?
Well, obviously, if you're a CPA, you're vested in preparing tax returns for people. You know about the complex tax issues, and so if you're going to have a return prepared, you don't want to try to do it on your own. People think they can do that on their own, save a few bucks, and then it can lead to a lot of problems in terms of an audit and things of that nature. So, in terms of preparing returns, you want to get uh, an accountant. Now, accountants can practice in front of the IRS, but I tell everybody I think that you should go to an attorney, and an attorney who does this every single day. And here's why. I've seen so many accountants just dabble in tax problems with the IRS on behalf of their clients, and they've given them horrendous advice. And I'm not the only one in my office that says that. I have 8 other attorneys in LA, Nashville, and Florida, and they all say the same thing. They've seen accountants give terrible advice to their clients about how to deal with the IRS. And I'm just going to give you one small example. The IRS only requires that the last 6 years' tax returns be prepared and filed in order to be compliant with the IRS and in order to get a negotiated settlement with the IRS. But we have seen on countless occasions that if the client has more than 6 years of tax returns that need to be prepared, let's say 10 years, the accountant goes ahead and tells them, we're going to prepare them all and we're going to file them all. Well, if they're self employed, and they haven't been making estimated tax payments, they could have tens of thousands of dollars in tax liability each year. And so for prior to 19, they didn't need to do that, because if the IRS doesn't file and you don't file, your tax liability is zero. And at this late date, the IRS is not going to go back and prepare tax returns for you from 2015, 16, 17, or 18. And so that is one reason why I tell people you don't want to try to get an accountant involved in dealing with the IRS. They're great with what they do. And Heidi, I got to tell you something. When I was a small town lawyer, I did 15 hours of continuing legal education a year.
Mhm.
The IRS is so complex, things change all the time, that we do a minimum of 50 to 100 hours or more a year. That's all my attorneys, in just keeping up with what's going on with the IRS. So
Wow.
I tell everybody there's 3 rules. If you don't hire us, hire an attorney that does this every single day.
Mhm.
Go local and don't hire one of the big boys. There's a lot of scam artists out there. They just take your money and they don't do anything for you. Do your due diligence before you hire somebody to represent you before the IRS.
That what you just said, that actually triggered a memory that makes sense because my parents always had taught me to keep my up to 10 years. And then I had heard later on 7 years of taxes. But see, you're saying six, so I'm going to just start throwing everything out. I'm just
Well, I'm not saying that you
yeah.
might want to keep the returns. What I'm saying is, if the returns have not been filed by the IRS
Mhm.
prior to 2019, you are under no filing obligation prior to 2019. And so don't file the return,
Yeah.
because you could be putting liability on the books for yourself that doesn't have to be there.
Wow. Are there other kinds of situations? that you could get, that you need a tax attorney rather than just a CPA or an enrolled agent.
That would be my suggestion. I've had enrolled agents in my employ. I always thought, well, I'll hire an enrolled agent and not an attorney because they won't be as expensive and they'll know just as much. Well, I got to tell you, I don't think with my experience with enrolled agents, and I'm not saying there's not good ones out there. I'm just saying my experience has been that I don't think that I would ever hire one again. I would stick with the attorneys. And there's two things that attorneys have that I don't think accountants or enrolled agents have. Number one is we're trained in argumentation. We're trained in negotiating settlements. We will go the extra mile. And the second thing is we're trained to zealously represent our clients. I had a guy in my employ once who was a former revenue officer with the IRS, was an enrolled agent, and we had a collection due process hearing. The client was going to have to pay everything. He was going to negotiate the settlement. And I said, no, you're not. You're going to not accept the settlement. We're going back to collections because this guy will go into currently non collectible. And he goes, well, I was just trying to get one less person out of my inventory. I said, it's not inventory. We're dealing with real human beings. You have to zealously represent your clients. And just because it's a little more work for you doesn't mean we're not going to do the best possible job for our clients. So we went back to collections. And guess what? The client didn't pay a dime.
Wow. 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 So are there, like you were speaking a little bit about liability, are there other risks working with a preparer who isn't qualified to handle these serious IRS problems?
Well, I think one of the things is a lot of those accountants will take, and I've even seen attorneys do this, they will take their clients to the interview with the auditors or with a revenue officer, and we do not want our clients to get anywhere close to the IRS. That's what they hire us for. And so we do not want our clients talking directly to the IRS because what they say to them, they can hold against them, but they can't do that with us. They can't do that with any attorney. And so we make it a condition of our continued representation in our engagement letter that if the client goes directly to the IRS and talks to them, we can revoke our power of attorney. Number one, they're going to hurt themselves. And secondly, then we don't know what's going on. So if the client says, well, I told him this, and the revenue officer says, no, he told me that, I can't really argue with them because I wasn't privy to that conversation. So we do not want our clients at any time talking directly to the IRS.
So if not you, then can a CPA represent a client during these type of negotiations, or are there limits?
No, they can represent their clients during these negotiations. Attorneys and accountants can automatically represent clients before the IRS. You don't have to take any special test or anything else. But if you're not an attorney or an accountant, then you have to take a test for enrolled agents and you have to be federally licensed. You have to pass the test in order to be federally licensed to practice before the IRS. And one of the problems is that they don't always look at things from the client's perspective. I've known of an enrolled agent, and all she did was take IRS courses in order to satisfy her continuing legal education requirements. And I think that's all well and good, but I think you have to go beyond that. And you have to understand that it's more than just the numbers. Most tax attorneys talk numbers. I talk about financial freedom. I'm the liberation architect. I'm the one who's going to give your life back to you. I'm going to save your income. I'm going to save your assets. I'm going to give your life back because everybody is entitled to be clear of the fear of the IRS. I say this all the time. I said it years ago on a Sunday morning talk radio show in St. Louis. I'm the guy who's saving Fay Ray from the clutches of King Kong. Now, Heidi, I know you're too young to know who King Kong is.
I know. Okay,
And so that's what we do. And that's exactly what we do. We're leveling the playing field because if these people go in and try to represent themselves before the IRS, they're just going to eat them up and spit them out.
Mhm. So then, when it comes to legal protection, how does like attorney-client privileges come to play when dealing with them with the IRS?
I'm glad you asked that question, Heidi, because that is a great distinction as to why you should hire an attorney
Mhm.
over an accountant. Now, accountants do have a little attorney-client privilege, but I have seen accountants forced to testify against their clients, and they cannot do that with an attorney. That's what the attorney-client privilege is for. They can't get into our work product. And so that is one of the reasons why an individual wants to hire an attorney over an accountant is because of the additional confidentiality protections that an attorney has. And so that's the reason people hire attorneys, because they know what they tell them is like what they tell their priest or their minister. It's going to be confidential. And it's sometimes I think I'm a priest or a minister with these people or a psychologist because this is what you have to do. If you are extremely client oriented, as my firm is, these are the types of things that you have to do to get your clients the best deal possible and to give them their life back, their peace of mind back, so that they can live again without fear from the IRS.
Hey, I'm like, we're not robots. We're humans, you know? So there's gonna be a little psychology in there somewhere when you have to deal with
That's
everything.
exact. If you're going to do and help your clients right, you really have to understand what your clients' goals are. You have to understand what's the best way to help your client. And the other thing, Heidi, that I'm just going to bring up is that the biggest complaint that attorneys have when there's bar complaints made, and I've got a story to illustrate this, is that the clients don't receive enough communications from their lawyer. And so I just had a guy, and I met him last September in San Antonio. He's being audited. It's like millions of dollars that we're talking about. And he hired a guy out of Texas, and I had, I knew the name, and I never heard anything bad about him. And so I explained different aspects of the IRS work he was going through, like a notice of deficiency and U.S. tax court. And he said, "This has never been explained to me before." But I said, "Go back to this guy. He's got a great reputation. You know, if you have problems down the road, then give me a call." Well, he hired me last week, sent me a huge check to represent him because he had talked to the auditor, and the auditor said he hadn't had any communication from his representative, which is sad. And I hate to see the guy leave somebody, but we're already in working with the IRS on this case, and we'll continue to help him out. In fact, we just found out 22 and 23 are under audit. 21 is completed, so we're already filing to go to U.S. tax court to try to contest the liability there.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. I mean, yeah, you don't obviously you're not trying to, take someone else's work, but if you're gonna, communicate like we spoke about, what do you gotta do? You gotta do what you gotta do. So when doing this, you're talking about rolled agents, and like CPAs. Do you ever work alongside CPAs to help the clients get that best outcome? You were speaking about it earlier.
Well, we will consult with a accountant, certainly, because a lot of, we offer those services, but some of our clients have had an existing relationship with their accountant for years, and we're not trying to pry them away from them if they're happy with their accountant.
Mhm.
And so we will talk to the accountants about different aspects of the cases. But in terms of dealing directly with the IRS, we're all going to do that on their own. And our power of attorney automatically revokes any prior power of attorney. And again, the reason is if their accountant is calling up the IRS about something, we don't know what went on. We're not privy to that conversation. So we want to make sure that everything comes to us. But that's not saying that the accountants can't be of big assistance to us in trying to get the client's case resolved in the best possible way.
When, like, so how far does it has to escalate? Like, when should you bring the attorney, over top of your accountant CPA?
Well, I think you should do it anytime you know that you have liability or that you're being targeted by the IRS, because the sooner you can nip this in the bud, the more time we're going to have to deal with the best possible resolution. One of the problems is people don't call you until there's a levy in place. Their wages are being garnished, whatever. Well, guess what? If it's a bank account and it's being levied, you have 21 days from the date of the levy to get it lifted, because the bank is required by law not to send the money into the IRS for 21 days. It's not accessible to the taxpayer, it's basically frozen. But that gives us 21 days to work out an agreement with the IRS. And once you have an agreement in place, then that levy on the bank account will be lifted. And so, but the problem is then that's, you got to do everything right away. And you have to fill out financial statements. There's a lot of documentation you need. So you got to do a lot of work right away. And the client's got to be on it right away because you're under an extreme deadline there.
What are some red flags that people have to look out then for if they're, like, over their head and, need your help?
Well, obviously, if they get a letter from the IRS saying we're going to audit you, that's one red flag. If they get a letter from the IRS saying that you got tax returns that need to be filed, they need to contact us. That doesn't mean we're going to prepare them. We do subcontract with accountants for that. But if they're happy with their accountant, we don't have any problem with that. If they get any letters indicating that the IRS has an intent to seize uh, their assets or their income, they need to call us. But just the fact that tax has been assessed against them, they need to call us, because that gives us more time. We have time to stop the levy. We have time to work out a resolution, and we can get the client the best possible deal under those circumstances. Delay very seldom is a good tactic with the taxing authorities, unless you're trying to rent out the clock on collections.
Well, then, Lance, is there any final advice that you need to give people when they need that, they need to come to you for their tax problems?
You know, it's hard. These people, they got into this problem because they're procrastinators. Well, let me tell you, the best piece of advice I can give you people is do not procrastinate any longer. Give us a call. We can help you out. We've helped out probably 10 to 15,000 individuals and businesses over the years. We have more than 1,000 pending clients at a time. We're going to have 2 to 3,000 pending clients at a time, because Heidi, I'm in the prime of my life. I'm going to keep growing the business.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much, Lance. And thanks for joining us on Resilience and Resolve. If you need help figuring out where your case stands and what kind of professional you really need, head to lancedrurylaw.com and schedule a consultation. And don't forget to leave a review, and subscribe to show so you don't miss a show for every episode that we have. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lance. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Heidi. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.